Hey, Godfather of Anxiety here. Just wanted to make a short video about the importance of controlling what you can control. And especially as it relates to overcoming the negative thought patterns and magical thinking that develop inevitably when we have anxiety disorders or even depression also contributes to this. So, when you're deeply depressed or anxious, you're going to feel very out of control. You're going to feel like you can't accomplish anything. First of all, if you're deeply anxious, a lot of the time your thoughts are racing so much you can't pay attention to anything. So you're going to be useless when it comes to a lot of the things that you normally would be able to do. And then on top of this, what happens is we make foolish connections with our mind with magical thinking. And to give a brief explanation of this, basically we worry about things, right? And then when they don't happen, then that reinforces that somehow we controlled something that we don't control by worrying. I promise you, by worrying about some catastrophic event, you did not keep that catastrophic event from happening. That's not how it works. We don't have that much power as human beings, right? So that's an element of magical thinking that develops when we worry about things we can't control. Because again, people who develop anxiety disorders, we're control freaks. That's what we want. We want to be able to stop terrible things from happening. And, but there are limits to what you can do as an individual human being. And what'll end up happening is you'll end up developing magical thinking and thinking that, especially with intrusive thought OCD or just OCD in general, there'll be rituals that you develop where you think you're stopping some bad thing from happening, by how many times you turn a doorknob or some other silly ritual. It makes no sense. It's kind of like being superstitious, but on steroids. And what ends up happening, because inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to realize that these things that you're doing don't really, they're not having the amount of control that you'd like. So you're going to feel even more powerless. And then at the same time, your anxiety is getting worse. You're worrying more and more and trying to control more and more and really being in control of nothing. Because all the things that you can control with your actions, with the way you interact with others, with your mind, when you think deeply about something and you're able to come up with a plan or a strategy, whether it comes to finances or work or whatever, all this goes out the window when your mind is occupied with either magical thinking, and then what happens is we end up catastrophizing. So there's another negative thought pattern where we think we're the worst case scenario is always going to happen. That's essentially what catastrophizing is. It's the extreme negative of what if thinking. And this will happen. This will develop. When we have anxiety disorders, trust me, guys, I've been through it. These will develop and they feed each other. And then when you throw depression on top of it, clinical depression, where your will to live, your soul feels like it's been removed. When you do that and you have that, because like I've said in so many videos, anxiety and depression go together so frequently. Even though they are considered different mental health issues, so frequently they occur together. So when you have anxiety and depression together, you will lack the ability to control the only thing that we really can control in this life, and that's our actions. Because we will either be consumed with fear, and our minds won't work well enough to accomplish things, Or when it comes to depression, you don't even have the gumption. I mean, getting out of bed in the morning is an accomplishment if you're severely clinically depressed. Taking a shower, that's an accomplishment if you're in a deep clinical depression. So the element of, controlling what you can control kind of ends up getting lost when you have these mental health conditions. So this video, it's going to be about, as you recover, as you start to recover, it's so important to rewire your mind to understand that you do have control, that not everything is out of your control, to actually believe what the Serenity Prayer says, right? So you know that, as much as you might not be able to control, world conditions, elections, the bigger things in life, world hunger, there's, elements of other people's actions that so frequently go in a direction that hurt us, right? It'll be like watching a train wreck. We can't control other people's actions. We can't control, global warming or anything like that. We can't control that. But what we can control is our own actions. And if you think about it, that's really what's going to affect your life the most, is your own actions. And so, again, going over what you're going to lose when you're deeply anxious, deeply depressed. The things that I lost control of, clearly, were, number one, my weight and my health. I told you guys I ballooned to 300. At my zenith, I was at 365 pounds. Obviously my blood sugar levels were, depending on which doctor you talk to, either pre-diabetic or fully diabetic. So my health was not doing well. My relationship with my wife and my children. I was an abdicating husband, abdicating father. It was not intentional. I love those people more than I love myself. But when you have severe anxiety and you have clinical depression, you are not going to be a good husband, a good father, a good wife, a good mother. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to give enough of yourself and give enough to relationships, because relationships, they require interaction. It requires give and take. You can't be a good listener when you have racing thoughts. You can't be a good parent and bestow good advice and good child rearing techniques when either you feel like your soul's been removed with clinical depression, or when your thoughts are racing so much that you can't think about anything, much less taking care of children. Your work will suffer, right? For me, my work suffered. It was a borderline miracle that I was able to keep my job for the 6 years that I was not successfully treated with anxiety and depression. Your work will suffer, your performance will suffer, your attendance will suffer. Because when you're worried about everything, you're not going to be a good employee. It's not going to happen. Your hobbies and your personal accomplishments, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. You're not going to be able to enjoy them. Clinical depression will scare you away from your hobbies, because you might start to try to participate in something you enjoyed, but you get no good feeling from it. And when this happens, it's scary. If you didn't have anxiety before that and you were just clinically depressed, when you realize that things you used to love aren't giving you any good feeling, that'll probably give you a measure of anxiety. So these were the things that I really lost control of when my anxiety was out of control, and I was having panic attacks, and I was deeply clinically depressed. So the important thing to do, and part of my recovery, was to prove to myself that I could control these things. So if you have to journal it. Take pictures. Most of us have cell phones now with cameras, right? Take a picture. If your goal is to lose weight or to get your health back, show your progress. Track it. Proving to yourself, proving to your logical mind that your actions matter is such a big part of recovery. And it's so empowering. It makes you feel empowered to be able to have a measure of control. Guys, I'm telling you, we're all control freaks anyways. Those of us with these conditions, that's a lot of the time how we end up with these conditions. It's because we want to control so much and do so much good. But when you prove to your logical mind during your recovery that yes, I can control my weight. Yes, I can affect my health in a positive way. Those relationships that suffered so badly, in my case for 6 years, my actions directly led to getting those relationships strong again. You know, my wife is basically a saint to have stuck with me through that. But I'll never forget when I started, about 6 weeks after I started taking the 2 medications that finally helped me recover, she said, "You're starting to sound like you again." And that was great. The other thing that it made me, that I was able to do that I hadn't been able to do was listen. A relationship doesn't just require talking, it requires listening. And same thing with my children. I was able to just do things and enjoy them. I wasn't worried about whether I was going to have a heart attack. I wasn't worried about, what happens if something happens to me and they're by themselves, and all of the things that were constantly on my mind that kept me from doing the things I would have loved to enjoy doing with, the 2 children I had at the time. So, I systematically went through and proved to myself I could lose weight, proved to myself I could improve my health, worked at getting those relationships back that I had contributed so little to for such a long time. And thankfully, I was able to. Remember this, the damage that's done when you have anxiety and depression is not irrevocable. You can, as you recover, you can get those relationships back strong again. Whether it's a relationship with a partner, whether it's your relationship with your children or anybody else, you can get the relationship back. It can recover just like you're recovering. And when people see the effort that you put in to your recovery, that's going to help relationships anyways, along with acting like yourself again. And guys, that's another thing I'll touch on really quickly. That's why I started the channel. That's why I'm doing this, because don't waste time. If you are having anxiety and depression on a level where it's hurting your relationships, it's hurting your work, it's hurting your health, go see a mental health professional. Don't delay. Don't. The one thing we can never get back, I can't get those 6 years back. You don't want to waste time and destroy your relationships, your work, your reputation, your health by putting off something. Once you know that it's anxiety and depression, for heaven's sakes, go to see a mental health professional and get help. And even like the last thing I was talking about were hobbies and accomplishments. Make sure that you keep track, take pictures, prove to yourself that you're able to do these things and to contribute and to do the things that you could do before you developed these mental health conditions that so drastically limited your life while you have them. I realize some people have had these conditions from a very young age. So that makes this step a little harder. In fact, I have a very close relative who's experienced these symptoms from a young age, and it does make these things a lot more difficult, but still, it's still part of the recovery process. Track it, prove that your actions matter, that you can control things. Maybe it's a limited spectrum of things you can control, but they're the most important things. Your interactions with others, your health, the way that you interact with your environment. We have control over that, and that's the great thing. That's the great thing that it's going to give us our enjoyment and that deep sense of fulfillment. We'll be accomplishing these things that we love and care about. So the fact that we can't control and we can't fix everything in the world, we can't control inflation, that, as much as that stinks, that doesn't keep us from being able to control the things that are so important to us and that affect our lives every day. And I think that you get so used to feeling powerless when you have anxiety and depression that you forget that you do have so much control over things that are so important to you. And so that's why I made the video. Don't ever give in to that notion that your actions don't matter. They matter. That's the only thing in the end that's going to matter that you can control. And by working on things, trying to accomplish things in a positive way, whether it's your weight, your health, your relationships, whatever you've lost with your anxiety and your depression, that proves to your mind that those things that you were thinking when you were deeply clinically depressed aren't true. They're hogwash. You absolutely can get your life together. You can do this. And yes, the world, there's a lot of things we can't control, but by controlling the things that you can, you'll feel so much more powerful and so much more centered in your life. So that's about all I wanted to say, guys. Just thank you so much for the engagement in the videos. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm going to try to improve the quality of these. Life has been a little hectic lately, and so some of my plans I haven't been able to follow through with. But thank you so much for the engagement. If you know anybody who's going through this, make sure you let them know. Let them look at some of these videos. I think it'll be really helpful. It might make it so that it rings a bell and they're like, oh, this is what's wrong with me. I know that, especially men, we're so proud. We don't even want to go to the doctors when there's something wrong with us physically, right? So when there's something wrong and it's a mental health issue, we can really put blinders on. So but anyways, that's why I'm doing these videos, so that you guys can realize what's going on, realize you're not alone, and get the help you need. So thank you so much, and until my next video, take care.